Assalamu alaikum everyone. Please do subscribe the channel. It won't take more than 3 seconds. And let's begin with the second philosopher who was the exponent of the social contract theory. He was John Locke. He was an English philosopher, and in his book Two Treatises on Civil Government, he has explained his theory of social contract. So we're going to look at the state of nature, what was the contract, and his theory of the limited sovereignty and the right to revolt, and finally what were the merits of his theory. Now, his state of nature. First of all, there was a difference. Now, regarding when I will be explaining John Locke's theory, we will look at certain differences between Hobbes and the Locke's theory. Regarding the state of nature, the Hobbes state of nature was pre-social because, as we had explained, that men were selfish, self-seeking, aggressive, and they were not social. So there was pre-social because there was no society. And now John Locke's theory, John Locke's state of nature is pre-political. There was a society, there was peace and goodwill and mutual assistance. People were not at all aggressive. They were sympathetic. They were compassionate, and there were the laws of nature. And what were the laws of nature? The laws of nature were those of equality, and there were reason and justice. And under these laws of nature, it was thought that the equality should guide as a fundamental principle between in the people's relations and dealings with each other. And also that regarding the reason was that the people should protect and should not harm the life, the health, the possessions, and the liberty of their fellow beings. Because John Locke was the person who expounded the theory of natural rights, the right to life, liberty, and property, as we hear so many times, that these are the inalienable rights that cannot be snatched away from a person. And so these were the natural rights, and according to the law of nature, that is the reason that people should not should not harm the other person's life, liberty, and property. So what were the reasons for the end of the state of nature? So there were three reasons. There was first of all, there was an inconvenience regarding the laws of nature, because everybody regarding everybody thought of laws of nature, and kind of got the concept of the laws of nature according to their own mental and intellectual capacity. So because there were no impartial judges to explain clearly that what were actually the laws of nature. And thirdly, that there was no common authority who was able to enforce all those laws of nature. So these were the three inconveniences, and as a result of these inconveniences, there was fear, and there was insecurity of the people's natural rights, and the people were not able to freely enjoy their natural rights because of this insecurity and fear of wars and quarrels, etc. So these were the reasons. State of nature. Now regarding the contract, so in order to escape that state of nature, that inconvenience and those insecurities, people came together to form the social contract, and they formed two contracts. One was the social contract to form a political society, and the second was the governmental compact, where the legal authority was given to the government. Now regarding the social contract, the people surrendered some of their rights, not all. This is a point where the Rousseau and Locke and Hobbes and Locke contradict, and they are not aligned. Is that the people surrendered some of their rights, not to a single person, not to an assembly of men, but to the whole community. They surrendered their powers to the community. And now this was the first step of the social compact. And in the second step of the governmental compact, people gave government the legislative power, the power to make laws, and the legislative power was regarded as the supreme power by Locke. And he did not use the word of actually sovereignty at all. So it was the supreme power to make laws. However, the governmental authority given to the government as a result of this governmental compact was limited. It was not unlimited or absolute. It was limited on the condition that the government will have authority, will enjoy the legislative power as long as the government will be able to protect the interest of the subjects, to until the people are satisfied with the government. So these were the two compacts or contracts. Now the next is that his theory of limited sovereignty and the right to revolt. Now, as I have told earlier, that the power of the government was limited. It was not supreme. It was because of the Locke's contract was a limited contract, because the individual surrendered only a part of his natural rights and not all of them. So the power of the state as a result was limited. And he did not use the term sovereignty, as I have already told. Now, the structure of the government, or the building of the government, was just standing on the foundations of the consent of the people. As long as people were satisfied, the government had the power. So this was the limited power. It was a government of the trust, So as long as government has the confidence of the people, it was there. It had the legislative powers. And as the legislative powers were already delegated from the people to the government, so it could not be delegated by the government to any other authority or assembly. And regarding the sovereignty, although the government had the legislative power, but there was another body, another power, another supreme sovereignty standing behind this throne of government, and that was the people. And people had actually the supreme sovereignty, the supreme authority. People were sovereign according to Locke, and whenever the legislator or the government betrays the trust, the people can depose it. So in a sense that Locke identified the people's right to rebellion, that if the government is making laws that are against the liberties and against the interests of the people, their properties, then the people could overthrow the government. And so the government was, at the mercy of the people's consent, the people's sovereignty, supreme power. So in this sense, Locke justified the glorious revolution of 1688. As a result of the glorious revolution, the autocratic Stuart kings were deposed from the power, were ousted, and a constitutional monarchy was established in England. And we see that in constitutional monarchy, the monarch is under the constitution. He does not have the absolute powers. Now, regarding the merits, so as I already emphasized the point that consent of the people mattered. So John Locke has been regarded as the philosopher of consent, because the government derives his power, his authority from the consent of the people, as long as people agree. So there was a constitutional government. There was to be, and he also distinguished between the state and the government, because he regarded state as the people and the government as the ruler, and the will of the state could overrule the will of the ruler, and the authority of the state was the sovereignty of the state is actually not the sovereignty of the ruler, because the sovereignty of the state is actually the popular sovereignty, the sovereignty of the people. And what else is that the government is a trust, and authority must be employed to fulfill the purposes for which the civil society or the state was actually established. So um, here again we see yes. So here again we see a difference between Hobbes and Locke, because Hobbes expounded a theory of legal sovereignty, as I have already explained, and Locke expounded a theory of political sovereignty, the sovereignty of the people. Regarding the theory of natural rights, Locke has been regarded as a person who promulgated this theory of natural rights. As I have already mentioned, that he was the person who came with the concept of the natural rights of the people, that is life, right to liberty, and the right to property, that were the inalienable, that are the actually inalienable rights, could not be taken away from the person, and they are the person have these rights from the birth. So this was all the theory of the Locke's theory. So if we just have a glance uh, at the state of nature, it was pre-political, it was mutual assistance, there was peace and goodwill, and the laws of nature guided the dealings of the people. There were natural rights of life, liberty, and property. The laws of nature were the reason and justice. At the end of the nature of the state was sought because of the inconveniencing. So there was not an authentic, description of what the natural rights were by any impartial judges, and there was no common authority to enforce those natural rights. Regarding the contract, there were two contracts: the social contract and the governmental compact. So in social compact, the people gave up surrendered some of their rights to the community, and in governmental compact, they gave the legislative power to the government, and the authority of the government was limited, and limited power of the government, because the government was only had only authority as long as the people had the consent. And the Locke also identify the people's right to rebellion when the government failed to protect the rights and property of the people. Then the people could oust the government. And he also justified the glorious revolution of 1688 in England, which created a constitutional monarchy. And that's all. Thank you so much.